Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 2023 meeting of the Triangle Association of Freelancers. Our guest this evening is Ayn-Monique Klahre. She's the editor of Walter magazine. We're going to talk a little bit about what the magazine needs, how people can pitch, and more. Before we begin, though, let me read a quick bio. Ayn-Monique Klahre spent over a decade as a magazine editor in New York City at InStyle, Woman's Day, Family Fun, and Good Housekeeping. As an editor, she produced stories for print and digital about all things home, DIY, and lifestyle, including decorating, home improvement, organization, entertaining, weddings, kids, and more. She moved to Raleigh in 2017, working as a freelance writer for publications including the New York Times, Apartment Therapy, Real Simple, and The Knot. In 2018, Ayn-Monique was hired as the editor of Walter magazine. Ayn-Monique holds a BA from Princeton University and a certificate in publishing from the Columbia Journalism School. Ayn-Monique, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'd like to begin by asking when did you first realize that you wanted to be a writer? What drove you towards a career in words?
Well, it's interesting because I don't know that I knew that I wanted to be a writer so much as I was attracted to the media landscape generally. I knew I liked to write. I always preferred my classes that involved essay writing over test taking. I knew I liked research. I knew I was interested in sort of current cultural subjects generally. And media seemed like a place where those things could come together. I was also always interested in visual arts. I, like to draw and sketch and paint and that sort of thing. So I liked how magazines specifically sort of married those two to, present information in this sort of like engaging way. So after college, my first job was in public relations. It was not for me. Eventually I made my way and got my first editorial assistant job. And honestly, I didn't even consider myself, I consider myself a writer, an editor up until 2017, when I had to work as a freelance writer and kind of rediscovered my love of actually writing and not just editing. So I don't know if I'm still comfortable identifying as a writer, even though I tend to write something every issue, and I still write freelance for a few publications. But I've learned that if I don't write in the magazine, that I'm not as engaged with it as I am if I'm only editing the stories. So I try to have a balance of both.
That's a good point. Having worked as a freelancer to the degree that you did that inform you as an editor for when you took the position at Walter? How did that experience, what did you bring from that experience to the editor's desk?
Honestly, the biggest thing is probably accountability. It's very easy when you've never worked as a writer you kind of ingest all these words and you want to put your spin on them and make them the voice of the magazine, but it's very easy to kind of overwork things a little bit. And also not to be as responsive to the writer as you really need to be, not to give proper feedback or deadlines or enough information to really craft a story from the beginning. So I think that the thing I probably learned the most about being a freelance writer was how to be a better assigning editor, how to, better communicate word count and format and the kind of reportage I'd want, even the kind of styles, just little nitpicky style things that I like. And I think it's helped me make me a better editor as I communicate back and forth on drafts and that sort of thing, trying to work with a writer to have them articulate what I want them to say rather than to just do it myself and, make it how I want it,
You were the kind of writer that freelance writers love to work with. There's nothing more frustrating than an editor who doesn't really know what they want when they give you an assignment. So yeah. I love hearing that. Tell us a little bit about, I'm sorry?
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting at Walter because a lot of our stories do come from outside people. And sometimes we don't know what the story is until we've gotten a first draft or we've started to do some of the reporting. So there is a little bit of back and forth, but it is, but sometimes I know exactly what I want and I'm able to communicate it. And then, people can deliver what we're both looking for,
Tell us a little bit about Walter. How is it different from the other regional magazines in the Triangle?
Okay, so Walter, I'll just start with the very basics. Walter comes out 12 times a year. We cover, let's see, I have the magazine in front of me so I can remember what on earth we cover in the magazine, but we really, I was working on our mission statement today. We really try to sort of tell authentic, curated, and relevant stories for people who live in Raleigh. So we really try to make sure that the focus is truly on Raleigh and not, we try not to be a statewide magazine. We try not to be a regional Southern magazine, even though some of those topics are relevant to people in Raleigh. And we really try to be very deliberate about what we're covering. It's not necessarily the latest, best, newest, whatever. We try to never say the best anything in the magazine, because what we're trying to present is that anything in the magazine is something that we deem worthy and something that we think people would like to hear about. But that can be in a broad range of topics. It's not, we want to talk about people, we want to talk about civic projects, we want to talk about food and art and music, and really just cover all these sort of cultural things that are happening in Raleigh. So, I think our tagline is that we're the art and soul of Raleigh, and we really try to think about, like, put everything through this lens of sort of this like cultural curation of all these great things that are happening in Raleigh.
Terrific. What is the magazine circulation?
25,000 in print.
And that's exclusively just mostly in Raleigh.
Yes, I mean, we have some people in a little further out and a few subscribers in other states, but it's mostly in Raleigh.
Did you make any significant editorial changes when you assumed the editorship in 2018?
I did. The first changes that I made were kind of more visual and kind of breaking stuff up again. Like I worked really closely with our creative director to reformat some pages, change the order in which things appear. It's stuff that I don't know that you would see in the magazine, but to me just made it more accessible and readable. And I think, just because the previous people had been working on it for so long, it just had been a while since one had kind of looked at it fresh and gone, why are we still doing this? Or why are we still doing this? So the first changes I made were visual. In terms of the content, I mean, I will pick up an issue from, 5 years before I came on board, and the writing and the photography, I think, is similar stuff to what we would be doing right now. Many of the subjects are very the same. I think the main sort of conscious change we've been making the last few years is really making sure that the magazine best reflects Raleigh's diversity of perspectives and people, because we've kind of had some talk about feeling like the scope of the magazine had narrowed a little bit too much to be really sort of one perspective and very inside the Beltline. So we're trying to just kind of broaden our perspective a little bit to be a little bit more inclusive of people in Raleigh. But
can you tell us a little bit about the relationship between Walter and the News and Observer? Is the magazine owned by the same parent company? How's that work?
Well, so when the magazine was created in 2012, they worked with, so the women who founded the magazine, Liza Roberts and Jessma Reynolds, they worked with consulted with a couple different publishing companies as they were trying to get off the ground, and ultimately went to the News and Observer, mainly because they had sort of like the sales expertise and the reach to kind of get the magazine out and about. So originally the News and Observer did own Walter Magazine. And then in 2020, the News and Observer sold Walter Magazine to a media group called the Pilot Media Group. And they have a couple of brands across North Carolina. They have South Park in Charlotte. They have Pine Straw and Southern Pines, and they have O. Henry in Greensboro, as well as Business North Carolina. So they bought us from the News and Observer in 2020, but they were actually a company that was one of the companies that Liza and Jessma were consulting with when they first started the magazine. So they kind of had a little bit of a hand in it then, and we're happy to kind of bring the magazine back. So now we do still have a distribution arrangement with the News and Observer, where I think someone was saying that they get the paper in the mail and they get the Walter with it. So we do still have that arrangement with the NNO, and we still share offices with the NNO. So when they bought us, we just stayed where we were, and now it's been a couple of years, and now we're moving different sides of the office. So we still, we're really friendly with those guys, but we don't have a technical relationship with them anymore.
Did the acquisition result in any editorial changes in the magazine, or was it just literally just a change of ownership and business as usual?
A little bit, and I'd be interested to see if people have noticed the shift. I will say that because once we were no longer owned by, certainly our directives shifted. We were feeling very sort of squeezed budgetarily and very conscious of, like, I would say we were very sort of like financially conscious with under our parent company, under the NNO. Now I feel like we're a little bit less focused on, I mean, we're still, trying to pay for ourselves, but like, it's less of a focus on that and more of a focus on really offering true community journalism. But also I think that the shift has come a little bit away of feeling like we need to be just sort of like the lifestyle magazine for the paper and more just sort of offering lifestyle content that's relevant to the community. So we feel like we have a little bit more freedom, for example, to include literary fiction every once in a while, to include poetry, to include first person essays, sort of like less of a responsibility to kind of be reporting on things in the city and more just sort of like offering different stories and perspectives that have to do with Raleigh.
That actually segues really nicely to my next question, because I wanted to talk a bit about your editorial needs. Our group has a lot of freelance writers, such as myself and others, who work in nonfiction. What are you looking for from your contributors? What kinds of stories are you most interested in and routinely solicit?
Well, again, we're interested I feel like we're interested in people who can bring us truly like specific stories. I would say when people are pitching, every once in a while I get a pitch that's like, I'd like to write about, I think it'd be cool to write about, well, let's use the love letters that you guys talked about, the article from last February. Someone could say, I think it'd be cool to write a letter about like historical love letters. And I'd be like, okay, well, do you have some that you can tell me that's the starting point for this? And they say, oh no, but I'm sure they're out there. Well, to me, like that's not the idea is there, but the story is not there. I feel like that's probably the hardest kind of pitch I get, where I'm like, that would be a cool story, but there actually isn't the story there yet. So the best story ideas are ones where people say, hey, I came across this really interesting thing. No one is telling their story. No one has written about this yet. Like, I think that this is the place where we need to tell the story. So maybe it's a person who you see walking down the street every single day, and finally one day you start talking to them and learned that they had this truly fascinating history and were super involved in some element of Raleigh's past, and no one has told this story. Like, that to me is like a quintessential Walter story. Is there's a story that somebody needs to tell it, and this is the only place where it really makes sense to tell that story.
You mentioned poetry and fiction a moment ago. Can you talk a little bit about that as an opportunity for freelance contributors?
Right. So every month we open the feature well with a poem. Right now we're working with Jackie Shelton Green, who's the poet laureate, and she's kind of our poetry selector, just because I don't feel qualified to choose poetry from month to month. So if we get poetry submissions, I send them straight to her so that she can go through and vet them. And she really has an eye towards, including people in different regions and at different stages of their career and that sort of thing over the course of our 12 months. In terms of fiction, we don't do it super, super often. I would be open to doing it more. It just kind of depends. We've been doing it since we were acquired by the Pilot. We've been doing it every August. We've been doing a little short fiction section. And people seem to like it and respond to it. So we're going to keep doing that. And then we've done sometimes we'll do stories around the holidays, that kind of thing. Like just thinking of stuff that feels seasonal and feels like a time when you're going to want to sit down with the magazine and read something that feels like it's in keeping with the spirit of the time.
Do you want the fiction or the poetry to reflect Raleigh in some way, or are we looking at more broadly literary fiction, short stories, for example?
Again, this is a little bit of new territory for me. It's always nice when they reflect Raleigh, but we just want them to have we just want there to be something that makes it relevant to the Raleigh reader, whether that's because it's by an author who is local or it touches on some sort of feeling that everybody can relate to. It doesn't necessarily have to be about or set in Raleigh, that sort of thing.
Great. On the other side of the coin, Ayn-Monique, what are you not looking for? What are the kinds of pitches that you routinely receive that are just wildly inappropriate?
Well, it's rare that I get anything that's wildly inappropriate. I mean, people who are pitching to me, they read the magazine, they they tend to know what we're about. I would say the hardest, I get a lot of pitches. And like I said, the hardest pitches for me are the ones where the idea is pretty good and maybe it'll make sense, but it's not, the story is not fully there. and that doesn't necessarily mean I need someone to turn in a fully written article that's already reported. Like I don't necessarily want that, but it has to be very clear like what the story is. And I would say like the worst pitches I get are the ones that are about things that we've just written about 1 month before, that kind of show that someone's not really paying attention to the content.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
How much does Walter pay, and what rights do you acquire?
So our rights are I think it's called first
Serial?
first serial rights.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
First serial rights.
That's good. We like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's on our website somewhere, and I meant to pull it up so I could drop it into the chat. But first serial rights, the rates are fairly standard. We pay around $250 for our front of book pieces for our shorter pieces, and $350, sometimes up to $500, depending on how complicated a story is, for the feature stories.
Okay, great. How do you prefer to be pitched? I mean, I'm assuming mostly you get pitches by email, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I do like email, and mainly because I have it. And I will say I read 99% of my emails, and I respond to 25% of my emails. I think my biggest, well, I don't know, I'm sure I have other flaws. I'm sure my husband can tell you all the flaws, but my biggest flaw is that, one thing I really struggle with is just keeping up with the volume of emails that I get, especially for a pitch that I like, that I'm thinking about, but I don't have a place for right at that time. Those ones stay in my inbox, and I come back to them and just don't always have, the problem is that we really don't run that many stories in print per issue or per year. So it's really, really hard to, I think the last time I cleaned out my inbox, if I published every pitch that I got that I thought was like a pretty good idea, I would have 5 years worth of content without even lifting a pen type thing.
Sure.
So the hardest thing for me is really choosing between many, many good ideas and figuring out how to slot them in. And it's, especially with new writers, because you just don't know how much work it's going to be to go back and forth with someone when you have something,
Are you okay with writers following up just to query on this? I mean, just to ask about the status of their query if they haven't heard from you in a particular amount of time?
Sure. And I just really urge everyone to please don't take it personally if you don't hear back, because usually if it's a no, you'll hear back right away.
So silence might be possibly good news.
It's at least neutral, it's I know, and that's a terrible thing to say. We just get so many things come over the transom that it's hard for me to keep up with everything.
Sure, I understand. I'm assuming you're the assigning editor, that you're the one who makes those decisions and actually makes the assignments with the writers.
Yeah, and there are only 2 editors on staff, so it's it takes me a long time to get through every issue.
Sure, I understand. Does Walter have a website? And if yes, is this also an opportunity for freelance contributors?
We sure do have a website. And it's interesting, the content that does well on the website is often different than the content that does well in book. On the website, people tend to be a little bit more sort of action oriented. So the things that we publish tend to be a little bit more kind of service journalism, where to eat dinner, where to go for a hike, where to take a picnic, like places, it's kind of travel, food, drink, like that kind of thing are the sort of things people are interested in for the web. We are happy to have web content. The issue is that we don't have a budget for web content. So sometimes that's a forum that I use for people who I want to test out. I can, assign them a web article that we might be able to run. But even with that, we build all our own web content, which is fairly time consuming. I want to make sure that I'm giving freelancers, I want to make sure that I'm giving people the respect of really working with them on a piece to get it to a point where we like it, and not just putting something online. So I have to be really cognizant of, not accepting more than I can truly edit, even for online.
Sure.
Yeah.
And lastly, I wanted to ask what advice you would offer to new writers, people who are interested in contributing to Walter for the very first time. How can they catch your eye? How can they get a leg up on the competition?
Again, like if someone comes to me with an amazing story idea that I've never heard before, and they have done enough research that they know what they're talking about, and it really seems like it has legs, you know, just an email with that idea, maybe links to writing samples type thing, just so I can make sure that they can string a sentence together, that is sufficient. I would say positive, happy follow-ups without making me feel terrible that I'm not so good at email I'm always grateful for that, because it truly is not personal if I don't respond to an email. I just, you know, when we're in ship week, the whole week goes by without responding to an email, and then all of a sudden I'm 300 emails deep and trying to dig out of it. So I would say just, yeah, the best way to be successful is to just, you know, just stay present, but really make sure that the idea has enough legs to it that I can go, okay, this makes sense in this issue, and plug it right in, you know.
Okay, terrific. And we understand exactly how hard you work. All of us understand that a lot of editors are working a bit short-staffed these days. So yeah, we're very understanding of your situation. Does anyone have any questions for Ayn-Monique about Walter, about her professional journey, about pitching? Sue?
Well, it sounds like you don't have a real big presence with the web, but do you think they might be a little bit younger than your print version?
Well, yeah, yes, but with an asterisk, because so most of the stuff, so I feel like people come to our website through kind of two different channels, through search, you know, so people, you know, looking up what to do in August, or best coffee shops in Raleigh type thing. Again, right. We try not to say the best, but online we'll say these are some of the best coffee shops according to chefs or whatever. So I would say half of our content online comes through that sort of channel, but then the other half comes through really like social sharing. So like if we have a story that we put on Facebook that's about some person who everybody loves, and they're so glad that somebody finally wrote a story about this person because somebody should have written about them 20 years ago, that story will get a lot of action on our site, because people really do respond to stories that, like, I keep coming back to this word authenticity, but like things that feel authentically Raleigh, about the people and places who you see around town and who should have been written about. Those are the ones that really resonate. So it's sort of that they're almost opposite things, but you know, as niche Raleigh as we can be or as kind of searchable as we can be.
And Monique, Nancy was curious if you have an editorial calendar, and if yes, if it is accessible to writers.
We don't really have an editorial calendar. I mean, we have some things that are sort of cyclical, like we tend to sort of do a little bit of performing arts thing in September. We cover homes and gardens in October. We usually have Thanksgiving content in November and holiday content in December. So no, we don't really have a calendar, but we tend to be sort of seasonal with our content.
Okay, very good. Let's see. Are you comfortable sharing your email for submissions?
Sure. Okay? It's just my name, Ann-Monique@waltermagazine.com.
Okay, terrific. And Hannah, I'm not sure I understand. Hannah asked, what does zero rights mean?
Zero rights?
Yeah, I'm not. Hannah, can you explain?
Yeah, that's what I thought I heard you say about.
So I think you misheard. It's first serial rights.
Oh, I did completely mishear.
Yeah. And if my understanding is correct, that means it gives Walter permission to run your article one time and then rights revert back to the writer. Is that correct, Anne-Marie? And Monique, sorry.
Well, the thing, I do have this typed up. If you give me a minute, I can probably find it on our website. The way we interpret it, and so I might not be using the exact correct terminology, but we have rights to run it in the magazine, online, in whatever thing Walter does. Mm-hmm. And for like the first 90 days or something. And then after that, like you can republish it anywhere you want. If it's possible to give a nod that you know, if it's something that was assigned, like if it's something that I commissioned, I'd prefer if y'all give a nod back and say this was originally commissioned for Walter Magazine. But if someone comes to me with a fully fleshed out story idea and I just plop it into the magazine, like put it in your next novel, you know, sell it to the world. Like, I mean, I don't feel like we pay enough for anybody to not take any other opportunity to get their work published.
We appreciate that. And also that what you were explaining was actually pretty standard. And it is a good situation for your contributors. It's very respectful of your writers.
Don, excuse me. Dawn,
Yep, Nancy?
could she say the email again slower?
Certainly.
I'll just drop it into the chat. Now that I have the chat open, I'll just drop it in.
I mean,
She's
is there,
putting it in the-
is there a
she's putting
hyphen
it in
in
the
it
chat.
and it
Yeah.
adds something?
Yeah, there you go. Ann-Monique at waltermagazine.com. Thank you for sharing that.
I have two screens, but the screens are misaligned. So I'm
So not the last name, okay.
There we go.
And Sue's has her hand up, Don.
Yeah.
Yep, Sue?
I get the vibe of Walter, you know, pretty kind of light content, but we are the capital. Do you ever do, well, I keep thinking of the Reverend Barber. He's not going to be around forever, and he's such a national presence. But I mean, maybe an interview with a political sort of personality.
Yeah, I mean, we're open to that. I mean, we actually tried to reach out to him for an interview a couple years ago and went back and forth and we're never able to connect. But, you know, we try to say we stay out of politics. Like, I don't want to be interviewing people who are running for anything right now. I don't want to be taking sides on anything like that.
Yeah, I
We
understand.
kind of try to nudge the conversation forward by presenting different perspectives within the magazine. If that makes sense.
Anyone else have questions?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
gonna say something.
Oh, yeah, Joel. Joel had a very kind thing. He says Walter pays on time.
That's important.
We pay on a schedule. I don't know if it's in a timely manner, but we pay on a cycle anyway.
Well, let's just say it's better than some art galleries I've dealt with.
Oh wow.
But
That really says something.
anyway, I just wanted to tell people, having sold a number of stories to Walter, it's been a pleasure to work with her. She has two editors. I think one is 6 and one is 8.
Now they're 8 and 10, but yes, they're
8 and 10.
they're very discerning.
Well, they were evidently very helpful when you were confined to the house during COVID. But yeah, I would say that the content of the magazine has shifted more towards a sort of, as you put it, the authentic stories. For instance, Marriott Little, I think it's a wonderful story. I've known her 40 years or so. So I'm pleased to hear, more specifically what y'all are looking for these days. And that's about it. She's not fraudulent. She pays on time. The magazine does come out.
It gets the Joel Haas seal of approval.
You bet.
Any
I'll
other
put it to this way:
questions?
she paid me a kill fee on one of the stories that came out at a very awkward time.
Yeah,
And,
I forgot about that.
Yeah. It was there were all sorts of street demonstrations about Black Lives Matter right after George Floyd, and I had just written a story on Jonathan Daniels, who was Josephus Daniels, who was one of the leading racists and one of the instigators of the Wilmington riots, for instance. And they were just moving the statue of him away from the News Observer building. And Ayn-Monique said, I'll pay you for this, but I just think this is really bad timing.
Yeah, kind of sounds like it.
Yeah. But I respected that, because I put, time and effort into it, and I would still pay the kill fee. And it wasn't because of anything I had done or she had done.
It was timing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have a question.
Yep. Hannah?
Does the poetry and fiction that you do, are they theme, like with the issue that's coming out? Are there any running themes when you look for poetry that fits within that theme, or requests of poetry that fits in with that theme?
No, again, I feel like most of our stuff, there's sort of there's seasonality to it, but not necessarily like a theme,
Okay. That makes sense.
Like, I don't want to run stories about green grass and butterflies in February, unless we're dreaming about green grass and butterflies. So there, I feel like there's a seasonal flow to things. Like we want to, like like we want our July issue to feel like July, but it's not, and often this doesn't relate to poetry, but in terms of the content, like we will sometimes shoot stuff a year in advance in order to have stuff that fits in seasonally, so that so that when you look at the magazine, it feels relevant.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions?
Great.
Okay, Ayn-Monique, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This was terrific. We really appreciate the information and the insight that you've shared with us. And hopefully you'll get some really good ideas from some of our members. And we just very appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for
If you'd like to
me.
hang with us for a few more minutes, this is the part where we talk about good news. If anyone has some good news to share. Does anyone have anything going on that you'd like to talk about? I guess not. Oh, Nancy?
You're muted, hon.
Yeah, so what's new? Okay. I got a reject slip that actually was handwritten, so
there you go. That's a step.
that's just part of the course.
Nancy?
And,
yeah, no, I said earlier I got a email saying that the editor of our next TAF omnibus accepted my short story. So I'm looking forward to getting that book out.
I look forward to reading it.
Some copies, yeah.
And Monique, every year we put out a group anthology. We started calling it the TAF Omnibus, and this year it'll be our second TAF Omnibus and our fourth actual collection. And it's an eclectic array of work: fiction, nonfiction, essays, poetry. It's a bit of a fundraiser for us, but it's also an opportunity for publication, especially for some of our newer members who may be new to the business. So we're very excited about that.
Oh, Donna?
Yeah, Hannah?
I have my blog post just came out on the website, Writing While Dyslexic.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'll have
I left the comment.
I do, and I have 2 essays coming out in the TAF Omnibus. Are We Living What Could Be Bad? And Menopause Mayhem.
Oh, excellent. I have a short story, a very, very weird, very, very strange short story. I look forward to the public response.
I like your stories.
That does remind me, I was going to make a solicitation for a very, very, very short story. So I had this idea for our October issue. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the New York Times and the tiny love stories.
Yeah.
100 words or less, whatever. So I want to do tiny Raleigh horror stories.
Oh, yes.
100 words or less, and they can be funny or gory or whatever, but I just
Black fiction.
Yeah, but 100, and so we'll see what we get. We've never tried it before, but if I can figure out how to get out of Zoom without totally losing the screen, I'll
go ahead and make a mention of that to our group through our listserv.
Okay, I'll send you I have a little submission form that
perfect. That'd be awesome. Yeah, we'd love to receive that. Yeah, that sounds like a terrific opportunity.
Yeah.
I love that idea too. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
anyone
as far as
anything? Sue?
Yeah. See, I'm the only one that puts my hand up. Like, I'm very polite, okay? But I went to Malice, what the hell? Malice Domestica. And I thought it was going to be traditional mysteries, but they were all cozies. They had the bookstore, and it was like tables and tables of books, and they were all cozies, with cats and cakes, and then there's my book, very traditional, right? And people, I met this wonderful team, and they do Dark and Stormy podcast for mystery writers. So they interviewed me. Yes. I don't know when it's coming out, but we had
That's nice.
Together.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats.
When you find out, we must put it in the email that we have.
Yeah, for sure.
They did a short thing. I put it on in social media. Maybe I'll share that with y'all. That came out.
Please do.
Way back when. All right.
Anyone else?
I just I just want to give a shout out to Mandy Howard, because she got me when she left North Carolina Catholic. She brought me in as a freelancer there, and now she's over at WRAL, and she's brought me in as a freelancer over there and their Spotlight series. Yes, exactly. I mean, she's fantastic, right? And she just looks out for other writers, and she's fantastic to work with as well. So I just want to shout out to her. To the
I'm glad
group.
you mentioned Mandy. I would crawl through broken glass while on fire for her.
Yeah.
She's one of the best editors that I've dealt with, and just a very, very sweet person. She's just a very nice person. And you're right. She really looks out for her writers. She's an advocate for her writers. Yeah, and when she offered me a similar position at WRAL, I jumped on it. And I'm hoping that that's going to be a long-term thing. So,
great.
And
Is
speaking
she a
of
member?
long-term, though, some of you may have seen my earlier Facebook posts, but I've been doing a lot of stuff for Encyclopedia Britannica lately.
Yeah.
And my next 4, which is going to be interesting, is about National Lampoon, the magazine, 1934 longshoremen strike on the West Coast, an artist named Frank Frazetta, and something else that I can't remember. But all of those are ideas that I pitched to them. So I was very excited when they said yes to that. But most recently, I delivered the entry on Mad Magazine. And that is a piece that I'm extremely, very, very proud of. So I'll share the link when that article is finally posted. So, but I've been having a lot of fun with that. That's been interesting.
Paul,
Is Mandy a member of TAF?
She was. I don't think she currently is, but in my last email with her, she said that she definitely needs to rejoin. So I will gently prod her in that direction. She actually has some stuff she wants to talk to the group about, including LLCs. So I'm working with her to make her a meeting guest down the road. Paul,
Well,
I see.
how can I hunt her down and find her?
Email me off and I'll share her email with you for sure. Paul?
Yeah, I had put out on the, you'd mentioned that the book that I just released got a decent review out of readers' favorite, but I didn't get an answer on, does anybody really recognize readers' favorite? Is that something any of you have dealt with, or?
That's not my wheelhouse. Perhaps somebody else?
I haven't heard of that one. Have you put it up?
Is it like Goodreads?
It's like Goodreads and NetGalley and stuff. It came from through Readsy. I had linked up with a marketing person and she had suggested it. Supposedly, what she says, because it got a good review, they're going to put it out on their newsletter for August and on their website. And supposedly, she says it goes out to about 500,000 subscribers of librarians, bookstores, this, that, and the other thing.
That'd be terrific.
Great.
I'm not familiar with the platform myself, but it was a great review.
So, well, we'll see.
Yeah, hopefully it has some value.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, guys, this was a great meeting. Ayn-Monique, thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate everything that you did for us this evening. Look forward to the magazine. And I guess I will see all of you next month. Same bat channel, same bat time. Everybody keep writing. Oh, don't forget on August 9th, Wednesday, August 9th, we are doing a TAF talk with New Yorker cartoonist Sydney Harris. We're going to be talking about Sydney's new book. It's called Kafka Does Stand Up, and it is an anthology of his published cartoons all about writers, writing, and books. And I'm going to be sharing some of his cartoons with you all as we get closer to the event. The fun part about Sydney is he's been selling cartoons since 1955. Dude is 90 years old and still running strong. So this is going to be a very interesting TAF Talk. I hope that everybody will join us for that.
Mm-hmm. Can't wait.
Good. It's going to be fun.
It is.
All right, everyone, you guys have a great evening. Ayn-Monique, thank you once more.
Thanks for having me.
Yep,
Thank
we'll see
you
all
so
of you
much.
later. Take care.
Right. Bye.